Hello everyone, this is Whitney Will from Starhearth Astrology, and today I'm going to be talking about the Cancer full moon that occurs on December 29th of 2020. The peak moment of this full moon happens at 8:28 p.m. In Mountain Time, and you can adjust that for wherever you are. This full moon and all full moons are culminations of themes, of some things that started at the new moon 2 weeks ago, which was an eclipse, and of other things that started at the Cancer new moon 6 months ago. And if you remember back to 6 months ago, we actually had 2 Cancer new moons. We had one on the solstice at 0 degrees of Cancer, and we had another one at 28 degrees of Cancer a month later. The first one was eclipsed, the second one was not eclipsed. So this full moon is kind of a culmination of a number of eclipses, and yet this one is the first uneclipsed Cancer lunation. I guess we had one uneclipsed Cancer new moon last summer, but this is the first kind of lunation cycle of Cancer and Capricorn that is completely uneclipsed. So we are done with the eclipses stirring up the issues of Cancer and Capricorn and wherever they fall in your chart. This full moon is also the official close of the eclipse season that we've been experiencing for the past month. So the way eclipse seasons work is that they begin with the first eclipse, which in our case was November 30th. And then I find, are most intense in between eclipses. So in between the November 30th eclipse and the December 14th eclipse was kind of the peak intensity. But then because lunations, new moons and full moons, kind of color the 2 weeks that follow them, we're still, the way I count it, we're still in eclipse season from December 14th until we come to this Cancer full moon that happens on December 29th. So this full moon will carry us out of eclipse season. So kind of closing the door on the kind of unexpected things that can pop up. That are especially characteristic of eclipse seasons. And instead kind of holding space for the peak of the Cancer full moon. So let's lean into that and kind of feel what that offers us. Because it is a kind of ending, right? We've kind of come to the end of the stirring of the pot of the Cancer space and of the real kind of peak of those issues. And what are some of those issues? Well, for one thing, safety and security, both emotional and physical. And also the sense of tribe. Cancer has a shell, and there are insiders and there are outsiders. And usually people, once you're outside, it's very hard to get back inside. And I think we've seen some of that this year with really strong lines being drawn between anti-maskers and people who are wearing masks. And a number of different security issues, be they cybersecurity or the security of our nation or what's happening to make us feel safe or unsafe, can kind of reach a pinnacle around this time. In a more personal way, Cancer is the archetype of the mother-child dyad, and the kind of sense of nurturing. It rules the chest area, but not the heart. The heart is Leo, though Cancer rules the breasts. So that kind of nurturing. And so it's a good time to check in and see what you have nurtured since those Cancer new moons, and also what you've been nurturing over the past 2 weeks. in my own life, that's very explicit because I went into labor right after the second Cancer new moon at the end of July. So now I have a child who is almost 6 months old, which is, I guess, a kind of culmination. Really wonderful to watch him change. But I think, when I look at what has grown and fortified and really come into being in those past 6 months, it's really my sense of my little family and how our son made us a family, and kind of the family culture that we've been able to develop in some ways, aided and held by this quarantine, has kind of given us a little safe family pod in which to discover ourselves. And I think that's really the offering and the gift of Cancer, is that, right, it is kind of that womb space, ideally, that's not suffocating, but keeps you safe while you develop your forms. So in some ways, a Cancer full moon is like something that's fully gestated, that's fully grown, and it's going to be born out into itself when the moon switches to Leo, which it will do a couple days later on December 31st. So that should be kind of a more fun party moon for New Year's Eve. A Cancer full moon is also nice because it is a full moon whose ruler is the moon. So the moon is in a particularly strong position with itself to do lunar things. So, I think what we're really offered with this Cancer full moon, and especially it occurring in the last few days of the year, Cancer is about memory, it's about nostalgia, it's about love, it's also about grief. And so I think what we'll feel coming into New Year's is all of those things very intensely. So it'll be a time when a lot of people are reflecting on what has happened in 2020. And there have been a lot of serious losses for many people. If you think about how each person that's died of COVID is the center of their own web, and their loss ripples outwards. And then you multiply that times wherever we are, many hundreds of thousands. And that's all rippling out. And that's just the deaths. That's not the job losses. That's not the suffering relationships. That's not the exhaustion of the healthcare workers. So yeah, even just with COVID, this has been a really difficult year. And I don't mean just with COVID, obviously. COVID is not a small thing. It has changed kind of the story of this year and the story of the world forever. And that's a kind of Cancer thing to say, right? There's a way in which Cancer feels the impact of what's happening around it and holds emotional space for that. Right? It's how the story of what's going on around you becomes a story that lives inside of you. Right? In Game of Thrones, the way that death is going to destroy humanity is by destroying the memory of the world. There's something about our memory that gives us identity. It connects us into this story that goes beyond us, that involves other people, that involves the story of other people. And so that's the kind of community that Cancer offers. And so, right, gathering our memories of this year together, sharing them, reflecting on them, is really a good ritual for this full moon, and also holding space for the grief that can bring up, and just acknowledging that grief is the other side of love. The two don't exist without each other, which means that where whenever one is present, so is the other. Another deep Cancerian truth. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to say about it before we look at the chart specifically? I think if I could, if people want actions with which to honor this new moon, I would really say the action is reaching out and letting people who have made a difference in your year know that they have. I think that's kind of probably the antidote to some of the heavier qualities of this full moon and the days that follow is really, right? Reach out, give a little bit of love. The Cancer magic is about nurturing the people that you want to nurture you. So yeah, let them know that they made a difference, because when we are kind of exchanging gratitude for each other and letting people know their value, we kind of open up a space for belonging. And belonging is relational. It goes both ways. When you offer belonging, you also receive it. And when we feel like we're connected to each other and we are part of something that's more than just us, that kind of shores up our little boat as we move through life, helps us all stay afloat. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pull up the chart of this full moon. The chart that I have is for my location, so the ascendant and the midheaven will not be the same where you are, but they will, but all of the relationships of the planets will be. Okay. So here is the chart that we're looking at. For the full moon, we've got the sun in Capricorn, opposing the moon in Cancer. And the main aspect that both of them are making, that it's a little bit hard to see with all of the aspect lines in, but the moon is in sextile to Uranus and the sun trines Uranus, and they're both just separating. So Uranus is at 6 degrees of Taurus. The moon and the sun are at almost 9 degrees of Cancer and Capricorn. So they're separating from this aspect, which, makes it, that aspect is still perfecting. Right soon. Let's see, when was that aspect perfect? So on Sunday evening, the sun trined Uranus, and then earlier on Tuesday evening, the moon will sextile Uranus. So still kind of intense, and we're still kind of moving away from that, but that's the closest aspect that's being made to the axis of the sun and the moon in their full moon. And I think that aspect is really about, this is going to be a 2-week period to integrate change. So Uranus brings about a lot of surprise change, possible surprise instability in certain ways. Its trine to the sun is a supportive aspect, if we can let it be, where these new insights, these new ways of thinking, that a new value system that may have developed, right, really gets integrated into our purpose and our task moving forward. And so I think it's going to be not about taking necessarily like hard lefts, but about taking confident steps forward into the new year. And so this lunation will kind of cover the time in between December 29th and our new moon in Capricorn that happens on January 12th. So we're really kind of holding space for that. And so it will be kind of emerging out of 2020, which has changed all of our lives. And, trying to find that steadiness within yourself to move forward to the, to the world that you want to see and to who you want to be in that world. So I think that's the main one. The other aspect that is pretty strong in this chart, though it doesn't aspect the sun or the moon directly, is Venus square Neptune. So you can see we've got Venus down here in Sagittarius moving into a perfect square with Neptune by 3 a.m. on the 30th. So pretty closely after this full moon. And that can make it hard to see clearly. Venus square Neptune, usually there's some tricks about what seems too good to be true or what seems fairly ideal. So it's just a time, though it can also bring very inspired dreams and connection to divine realms, there's just usually we can't see clearly. So it's a good time to dream and not a great time to take action. Be careful about what is hypnotizing you and mesmerizing you. Because if you're getting that feeling that it's too good to be true, you're probably right about it. So that's the only other big one. Apart from that, over the next week, there's really not too much planetary action. It's mostly the moon moving around. We really don't have too many other things going on. And if you watched my Capricorn season video, it's this week that is kind of the slowest in terms of aspects happening. The week directly after the full moon. We get a little bit more once we have the moon square the sun, which will happen in the first week of January. And then it gets a little busier building up to the new moon on January 12th. And that's what I have to say about it. You're free to kind of do your rituals and whatever full moon stuff without fear that the eclipse will mess it up or introduce anything funky. But Uranus is there, so I would just say stay nimble. Maybe experiment with some different things. That's about it. Thank you to everyone who signed up for my 13 Moons Lunar Intensive. I'm very excited. It starts January 4th and it is 13 weeks of coming together on Monday nights, both to learn about the moon and to share our knowledge and experience and develop the language so that our natal moons can come home to us. And we can understand them in our own ways and really feel a sense of belonging to them and that they belong to us, to cultivate a kind of self-sovereignty that helps us feel both safe and empowered in the world. So thank you to everyone. If you didn't get a chance to sign up but are interested in the course, you can always click through the link to the registration and hop on the wait list. And then the next time I offer it, you will be the first to be notified about that. I'm hoping to offer it again in the fall. Okay, I hope everyone has a safe, deep, reflective, nostalgic, beautiful full moon. And I will be back to talk about the new moon on January 12th.